You're listening to Reignite, a podcast about friendship. I'm Frankie.
And I'm Matt, A.K. Stormageddon.
The nobles are gathered, concerned about how the wardens will protect them in the coming war with the Darkspawn. But before we deal with all that noise, it's time to fuck off for a bit and help our friends with their problems.
Yep, it's our biannual. I don't know how often we get to companion quests in a game, depending on how the seasons shake out, but our frequent of, here's an episode about companions. Enjoy.
Yeah. But before we get into it, I do want to address the fact that we've been kind of missing for a little while. March sucked for me personally. I don't know about you, Matt, but it was not a great month emotionally or physically.
My life has been hell since mid-February, so I can relate.
Yeah. So we are back on schedule. We're going to do our best to stay on schedule, but we are people with lives and things happen in our lives. So bear with us. We do our best always, and therefore no one should criticize us.
I mean, if literally if anyone said, hey, what the fuck, I would be like, hey, someone gives a shit. I mean, I know you folks listen, but like our audience is very, we're along for the ride, whatever. And so, but yeah, things have been hard. Personal stuff has come up. And also I was at PAX East, which swallows like a week and a half for me. So while that went really well and we got to do some cool stuff for fun and games, yeah, it's just the last few months have been a nightmare, and dealing with some personal stuff that could make months in the future a nightmare, but we'll do our best to keep you posted as we shift and pivot. We are coming to the end of this season. I don't know that we'll have as big an extravaganza at the end of this season. We will do an episode that's a full wrap-up of both Awakening and Origins, but I don't know that we will have a TTRPG episode for this. I do want, hopefully at some point in the coming seasons, to do a Dragon Age, because there is a Dragon Age tabletop, so to do a TTRPG ep, but honestly we have to talk to Mr. History Wizard to see if he has time to organize it, because we're all,
or if we can ask someone else. We don't always have to rely on John.
That's true.
That being said, also a funny thing that we could do is a Baldur's Gate stream.
We could do a Baldur's Gate stream. So, yeah, Frankie and I behind the scenes have talked about covering Baldur's Gate 3. The problem with covering Baldur's Gate 3, A, it would have to be after we're done with Dragon Age, and B, it is a very long game, and to break it up into parts when you can miss so much would be a challenge, but streaming it could be a lot of fun, creating characters based on ourselves for and playing multiplayer for a bit. We'll see. That could be a thing that we could run concurrently if we find that it works and we can work the scheduling. But it is a fun idea. That said, as we gear up for Dragon Age 2, we do plan to try and break that up more bite-sized and have guests per episode. The companion,
it'll be easier.
Yeah, it'll be easier to follow the flow, and the companion stuff is easier to kind of do what we did actually in Mass Effect 3, where we like do an episode about the character and bring someone on who loves that character, kind of a thing. But yeah, so thanks for your patience. We appreciate it, and now we can discuss a very pivotal cutscene with the mother.
So we get this cutscene with the mother. She still freaks me out.
Yeah.
She is very disturbing to look at. She gets the news that Kal Harol is lost, and also the Lost is lost. They're not great at names.
No.
In the Darkspawn Legion.
No. The mother, the Lost.
They're not good. The mother talks about the experience of the call, which we know about because the wardens experienced the call at some point.
Yeah.
To go to the Deep Roads and where they will eventually die. So she talks about the call in terms of being controlled or being guided by the archdemon. But she says the father took that away. Is the architect the father?
I don't know. Like, I feel like I should know because I've played this before, but based on the narrative we've experienced so far, it is unclear. That would be
it's very ambiguous.
Like, that would be my assumption if we make it based on outward facing gender presentation, but like beyond what typically looks like male, what typically looks like female, which should be irrelevant. I otherwise have no idea how to, like, who that could be, you know?
How do you feel about the story being spoon-fed to us in this way? Like, we've had the experience of a cutscene to give us context before, like seeing what's going on with Logan and how, but I feel like this is still different.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like in previous missions for this game or even previous BioWare games, they sometimes will like tie the story with a bow in a cutscene or like give you a little bit of context, but it is rare that we get major plot points only within a cutscene. Sometimes it'll be like a mission with conversations leading up to that cutscene. I think about like the dwarven politics stuff, like the conclusion of that stuff is in a cutscene, but all of the nitty gritty and the details of it aren't in that cutscene. They are in the lead up and the conversations and the events that happen. This feels like we get these tiny little tidbits of lore, and then in this cutscene, they explain what the war is when we really didn't get any of that context beforehand.
Yeah, but they don't explain it well.
No.
They leave it very vague. They leave it very ambiguous. And I can understand to a point that from the warden's point of view, we shouldn't really know what's going on because the warden doesn't know what's going on. But in that case, why even have these scenes at all if you want to keep us in the dark? I just feel like it's not enough of a hook to keep you interested. If anything, it makes you more confused.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I played this DLC originally out of obligation to want to see the whole story. And as I mentioned previously, because I was playing the whole trilogy in one sitting, several sittings, but in a row, I kind of rushed through it. But I don't feel like I have any more clarity this time as we stop to discuss it every episode. And if we don't have clarity dissecting it, the player who's just kind of playing through will definitely not have clarity, especially if you're someone who like is not 100% focused on the cutscenes and the narrative, which again, easier in other incarnations of BioWare stuff to kind of float and still pick up the broad points. I feel like with this DLC, it's just kind of a little all over the place, especially since the missions we did leading up to this, where you get a new companion in every mission, could be done in any order. Mm-hmm. And so they had to be designed in a way that they could be done in any order, which I think is part of why there is this kind of nebulousness, is because by design, the game had to kind of give you stuff in pieces because they didn't know what order you were going to choose things.
Right. I do not love it as a mechanic, is what I am getting at.
I agree.
Let's talk about the keep and some housekeeping. Some housekeeping at the keep.
Yep.
Housekeeping.
It's so much funnier when you explain it.
I didn't even really explain it. I just said the words a lot.
Yeah, I know. And like a lot of visual winks and nudges that the audience cannot see.
Fortunately, it's not a visual medium.
Yes. That's why I'm calling it out now.
All right, let's go down the list. Woolsey, did we get both merchants?
Yes, I believe. So this refers to the Canary merchant, and then there was one other one. I can't remember.
Yeah, there was a woman that you can rescue.
Yes. Yeah, from the thieves. And then she comes to the town. So yes, I did get both of those merchants.
Fantastic. Heron, did we find all the ores?
So is Heron the one who agrees to reinforce the keep?
No, Heron is Wade's boyfriend.
Oh, right. Okay, so no, I didn't get all the ores.
Okay. So you didn't hear from Heron like, now we can definitely supply your armed forces.
Yes, correct.
Okay, just making sure. I did.
Okay.
So all of my soldiers, they're good to go. Wade was so pleased.
I'm sure.
Did we find all the mythic materials for Wade?
I believe so, yeah.
Did you give him all the things that he needed in order to make those mythic materials?
Right, yeah. You get like specialty weapons from it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get a shield, you get like a bow or something else, and armor.
Right.
Okay. Valdric and Dworkin, is the keep shored up?
Yes, that I did.
Fantastic. You got the quarry.
Yep.
Did you give them the tablet from Cal Harol?
Did I? I don't remember. I think I must have. If I grabbed the tablet, I would have.
The tablet shows that the Castless in Cal Harol fought to protect.
Yes, I did. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. So that's pretty much it for the keep.
See if we survive the war or not.
We'll see if we survive. I stand a better chance than you do.
Which,
from
for
this perspective.
diversity of podcast experience, since we tend to do the same thing, we should make things interesting, if nothing else.
Oh, yeah?
I mean...
So what you're saying is you did this intentionally.
Right, totally. It's not because I couldn't find it and didn't want to look up a guide. Look, if we're playing to the truest extent of ourselves, the truest extent of myself was I was lazy and didn't feel like it.
And the truest extent of myself is that I was neurotic and made sure that I found it.
I mean, look, we are who we are.
All right, let's go through our companions. Anders. So the setup for this is that he was informed by a friend that there was a cache of phylacteries in Amaranthine,
right,
and his phylactery was amongst them.
Right.
So we get the opportunity to go destroy that phylactery. But when we get there, lo and behold, no phylacteries, but there are Templars who are like, I knew it.
We gotcha.
Got him. And you have the option to either be like, no, you can't have my boy, or be like, here, take the boy.
So now here's the thing. I guess it's minor spoilers for Dragon Age 2 that Anders comes back, but I feel like that's pretty well known at this point. If you give him to the Templars here, how does that, I just don't understand how that translates. Because he's kind of on his own. I mean, I guess he could have escaped again. He's escaped so many times, but
yeah.
It just
that's what I would assume.
But I'd be curious. I mean, you'd have to be a monster to do it. I know this because the one time I even streamed briefly that I was supporting the Templars for charity for Dragon Age Day, everyone came out of the woodworks to tell me what a monster I was, which was like
A-tab.
Anyway, but yeah, no, of course I, like you, I assume, supported our boy and told them to F off.
Yep.
But I am curious. So listener, if you've played this DLC and you did give Anders up, I'm curious if you have any knowledge as to how that plays out in the second game. Because I am curious. But yeah, of course I defended Anders. I would not.
For me, it was funny because she then said, of course another mage would say that. And I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I didn't get that line because I'm just a
whatever.
Usually,
I'm just a dwarf and life is a nightmare.
Okay, enough. But also, most of the time, the Templars just look down on me because the fact that I'm a dwarf and know nothing of magic.
I'm just a dwarf, and you know that it's not fair.
Anyway, and then that's it. The quest ends. I guess you get a follow-up conversation with Anders, but there's not much more to it than that. You just kind of choose to protect him or not.
Yeah, he wonders if his friend knew that it was a trap or not, but he kind of shrugs it off. Even if she did know, what can I do about it?
Yep. Yeah.
So let's move on to Oghren. I could not trigger this because I did not have enough reputation with him. But it is ultimately about should Oghren stay in touch with his family. We find out that he and Fal'Cie did get together no matter what you did in Dragon Age Origins. They had a kid together, and Oghren decided, I should not be here for this, and joined the Wardens.
Yeah.
So you can either encourage him to stay in touch with his kid or not. What did you do? Did you get this?
I didn't. And so I thought I had enough reputation with him, but and this will be a running theme as we talk about some other stuff, but I found that the engagement for companion stuff here was much harder to trigger. I had a backup of conversations with Velena because I didn't know that I had to click on an item behind her to trigger the conversations in the keep. It took me a while to realize also the big barrel of booze that Oghren's standing in front of, that if you click on the spout for it, the spigot, then he starts to talk to you. But if you click on him, he just says ambient things. And so it was just very frustrating to me because in the previous version, not previous game, but in the base game, when you were in camp, you just clicked on your companion and chatted with them. And so this was just an odd change that made it. So I ended up getting a backlog of discussions to have with everyone except Justice. And so I had a bunch of conversations with Oghren, but most of them about him drinking and him being in this place. And I don't remember a conversation about his family. So if it was there, it was so low impact that I didn't even register it. But I'm guessing I didn't trigger it because I didn't have high enough rep with him.
There's one with Sigrun. I also didn't trigger this. I think maybe it doesn't trigger unless she's made a warden. So there is a chance that we could still trigger it, maybe.
Yeah, so I think we talked about this in the previous episode, but if we haven't, like I forgot to do Valena's joining before the last mission, and so I was like, oh, I'll just do it after along with Sigrun's. And then when we got back, I couldn't trigger them because all what's his name wants to talk about is starting the war, not doing the joining. So maybe after the war we can. If not, then yeah.
Or maybe after that initiating conversation.
So when I went down that path just to see what happens before continuing on, it starts a cutscene. So I don't know that we have opportunity. I think it goes right into the war, but we'll see.
Okay, we'll have to see.
But the same thing happened to me. I wasn't able to trigger it. And Nathaniel, I have nothing because I chose at the very beginning of his companion quest to say, fuck the fuck off. And so.
Yeah, and his wasn't all that impactful, really. It's just give him anything that has the Howe family crest on it and also go talk to his sister Delilah so she can be like, you weren't here. Our father was a monster. Please stop.
Yeah.
And then he's like, huh, I guess our father was a monster.
See? I've been saying this.
And then he's like, you're a good friend.
Oh, God.
I'm like, thanks, Nathaniel. You're all right. He is all right. He's not bad. Nathaniel's pretty okay.
Meh.
And he enjoys being a warden, so, like, I did him a solid. Valena, there is a situation where you run into other Dalish elves and they talk shit about her. I didn't trigger it.
Oh, I did do this. So
okay, great. You talk about it.
Yeah, so you run into members of her tribe. As we know, she ran off to try and find her sister, even though she was told not to. She started attacking the humans, even though she was told not to by her tribe. You encounter them. They recognize her. They start to talk about how she shouldn't have done this and that you are a disgrace to the elves. And you can step in and say, hey, she was trying to protect her family. I stand with her. And she's grateful for that. And then that's it. There's not much else comes of it beyond just her being grateful that you stood up for her.
That's nice. You show Valena.
I did. I was like,
not all dwarves.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a conversation we didn't really have. That like, it's interesting to watch Valena be essentially racist to the other races, but she is also an oppressed race, so it's like
right. So it's not really racism
No.
because she is the victim of systemic oppression.
Correct.
She has biases.
Right.
We can say that.
Yeah. No, of course, but like it is just one of those interesting things.
Her biases are valid.
I mean, also true humans suck. I'd be the first to say so.
And then we have Justice. There's no decision involved. It's really Justice wants to go speak to the wife.
Yeah, you go to the Chantry in Amaranthine and you find her there and chat with her, and she's more level-headed on the second conversation. She asks what your purpose is, what you'll do, and you can tell her that you want to avenge his death, you want to destroy the Darkspawn, you want to do right by him, and you can also share that because he feels Kristoff's feelings. He's like, he loved you very much, and I'm going to do everything I can to like kind of take out the Darkspawn and avenge his death.
Aura's really intense. She
Yeah.
says, I will await his ashes a little longer if it means the ones who did this will pay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
I mean, she is the wife of Warden, so I guess that's the life.
Yeah. I could see
It's the life when someone you love fucking throws themselves in danger. I feel, however, that marriage would, not should, but like would be something that the Wardens frown upon, though.
I guess. I mean, they're not Jedi. I think they feel like
Not in a, like, you can't have material attachments way, but in a more like, hey, at some point in your late 30s, you are going to do the walk of death. So maybe marriage isn't a great idea.
I mean, I guess that's not the warden's problem in the sense that
Yeah, I
the
guess.
individual warden would have to have that conversation with their significant other. Like, hey, like, I know you really love me and we're really happy, but I should let you, like, you should. I mean, also, if you are falling for someone and getting very close to them, you would learn these things about them and their profession naturally. So I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting thought.
our experience with someone becoming warden was when they are 19 or 20 years old.
Right.
So they have their whole lives ahead of them. But a lot of these other people are like firmly adults when they become wardens.
Right.
So I don't know. It's interesting to think about, in my opinion.
It is. I mean, I would talk about it more, but they don't even let me talk to my husband at all in this game, and it makes me mad.
I'm sorry that you can't talk to him.
It's stupid. I don't understand. It's just, in all other DLCs that we've experienced, at least on the Mass Effect side, there is connecting pieces. Even if you pursue Liara in the first game and then encounter her in this DLC for the second game, it's a conversation piece. It's not the whole thing, but like you can't even agree to keep your relationship going. It doesn't do anything, but you can. Like, there's none of that in this game. Now, albeit, like, this came out after, I believe, after Mass Effect and before Mass Effect 2, and a lot of major changes and improvements to the franchises that they have made came after that. But still, it's frustrating that it's like Awakening feels like an afterthought in a lot of ways.
Also, keep in mind that there is an outcome of Origins where the warden dies.
Right, and
there is no warden
right.
to start Awakening.
Sure.
So you play as an established warden that has no connection to the previous warden.
Yeah. I mean, I think the bigger problem with this is because they put all of those resources into Mass Effect to make sure that all of the choices connect to other choices, Dragon Age takes a much lighter hand at it, whereas each protagonist is different for each game. The relationships carry over only a tiny bit. Hawk has a brief moment in the third game. The warden
Werewolves basically don't exist after Dragon Age Origins.
The warden is mentioned in the second and third games, but is never seen. Like, yeah, it is bizarre. But I mean, it gives us a different perspective on connected worlds, right? Because not everything can be Mass Effect. In fact, very few things are. But I agree that going back to the start of this conversation, I think that conversation about marriage and the Wardens is a bigger conversation about relationships in Dragon Age, which is a whole other can of worms, and possibly a future topic for the podcast. Because I think it would be fun to explore maybe later down the line when we've covered the breadth of the games of like, how do relationships in Dragon Age differ from relationships in Mass Effect, kind of a thing.
I'm starting to form like more talking points about that, honestly. Like, it's starting to make more sense as I percolate on it, so to speak. That's kind of it for things that can be done. I do want to highlight this one thing that Anders says after all is said and done, which is, I apparently am worth the trouble. Considering I'm usually a lot of trouble, I should be grateful.
It's a good line.
And I'm just like, buddy. Because also previously, you have an option to say to him, hey, friends stick up for each other. And he gets very hesitant with you.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you're right. It just kind of drives home that Anders doesn't really have friends.
No.
You're possibly the first friend that Anders has ever had on a consistent basis.
Yep.
Especially considering the other friend that we know of possibly betrayed him.
Yes, correct. I do want to shout out, and we've talked about it before, but I think the party banter in this game is particularly good. I mean, it often is, but like you can see relationships developing between Anders and Justice, like wanting to know more about each other. Mostly it's Anders annoying Justice, but like even you can see with Sigrun and Justice and Velena and Anders, like a lot of Anders' early conversations with Velena are like him hitting on her, and then the later conversations are him realizing the mistake he's made. And I think that like I love that evolution in the party banter.
There's a really cute conversation between Sigrun and Velena where Sigrun is like, "You're the first elf I've ever met. Like, aren't you honored?" And Velena's like, "Excuse me? Why?" And Sigrun's like, "The impression that you make will formulate my opinion of all elves for the rest of my life."
It's very good.
It's so good. Sigrun is so great and on point. I feel like Sigrun is a little like breaking the fourth wall nod in a way. Like, she says things like that and it's like a wink to the audience.
I mean, not only that, Sigrun says the quiet part out loud. The part you're not supposed to say, Sigrun says out loud.
I love her. She's the best. More Sigrun forever. It's a crime that Sigrun does not come back.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about this more in the final episode of the season, but like I love these characters. I like some of them better than the regular characters in the base game. And we only get them for this long-ish short experience, and it's kind of a bummer. Some do reappear, some more than others. But even their reappearances later, I feel like it's a whole other conversation I want to get into till we get to Dragon Age 2, but I kind of am mad with how they handle certain things. I understand why narratively, but it irritates me. Anyway.
I would like to rewrite the timeline and put Sigrun in Ogren's place.
Agreed.
Just rewrite the entire... When you remaster the game, just make sure that you just take out Ogren and put Sigrun in.
Yeah, at this point, I don't think we're ever going to get a remaster of these games. I will be surprised if we even... Like, Dreadwolf is coming. It from what I can tell, is far enough along in production. That sounds like a threat. Yeah, it feels like one, too. But in all transparency, with everything that EA has done to fuck over BioWare and the things that BioWare has done to fuck over BioWare, I do not think we're getting the next Mass Effect game. I have no idea how far along it is, but like I have no faith that we'll actually get that. I will be surprised if Dreadwolf ever comes out at this point, but like Mass Effect specifically, like I just don't think it's going to happen. The studio's going to be run into the ground before that happens, and it's disappointing. Thankfully, there are other developers out there trying to make games like this and putting in the work, but it is just a bummer that two of my favorite franchises of all time are probably dead in the water. Now, some people have been living like the trilogy and Andromeda are the only things that we'll ever get anyway. But it just does just kind of bum me out that we could be seeing the end of the studio. Now I'm catastrophizing a bit, and I don't know more than what we've seen in the news, but it definitely does seem bleak after the most recent EA news earlier this year. So, but we'll see. That said, I am excited to put a button on Awakening. I think we'll see how the final act plays out, but I think I understand what they were trying to do. The rumors of this supposed to be Dragon Age 2, and because it was so similar, they're like, no, let's just make it DLC. Let's try something else. And then Dragon Age 2's rushed development. Like, it's clear to see why the flaws are there. I don't think that will allow me to excuse it because we're still kind of taking it on its own merits, but it is a little frustrating to play a DLC that feels like it gets half the stuff right and then the other half not so right.
So it's unclear how many episodes we have left in this season, but it's not many because our next episode is going to be kicking off that war that's been coming between us and the Darkspawn. I want to say 2 to 3 episodes left.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, we'll definitely have, like I said earlier in the episode, a button episode kind of wrapping up our thoughts on Dragon Age Origins and all its DLC, including this one. And then we'll head into the new season after that. But I'm not sure how many episodes between now and that. 1 to 2 sounds right, to 2 to 3 depending, with all told. I don't remember how long this part of the game takes, and if it's like if we barrel straight towards the ending, or if there is like moments to stop. I can't really remember how it shakes out.
I can't remember either.
So I would
walkthroughs are not helpful.
No. So I would say at this point, if you're a player who's been playing along episode by episode, one, thank you. It has been hard to kind of preempt each episode just because of what a mess of options this game is. Again, cite this for why we're hesitant to cover Baldur's Gate 3, though we want to. But that said, at this point, you can just beat the DLC, I think, and then enjoy the episodes as we go. I don't think the rest of the game is more than 3 or 4 hours at this point, if even that much. So if you want to just play through to the end of the game, and then we'll take it as it comes, because we're kind of going to have to feel it out in the coming weeks as we go. So yeah, and then start pitching your ideas for guests for season 2, because we are definitely looking to bring some new folks on, as well as some folks who have been on before, and maybe a wild Yuri Lowenthal at some point too. Working on that.
I swear.
I know. I'm working on it. He's a very busy man who does a lot of anime and video games.
But I'd like to yell at him.
I know.
So if you like what you heard here, Don't forget to follow us on social media. We're at Reignite Pod on Twitter, Blue Sky, Tumblr, and Instagram, facebook.com/reignitepod, or you can send us an email at reignitepod@gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter at Frankie B. Writes and at DJ_Stormageddon. On Blue Sky, I'm still Frankie B. Writes, but Matt is just DJ Stormageddon with no underscore. One day, they'll get that underscore. One day.
Yeah, I'm not holding my breath on that.
But don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcatcher if you can. It helps us get seen so other people can find us.
Also, tell a friend about this podcast. If you know someone who is obsessed with Mass Effect and Dragon Age, please send them this show, because that is the strongest recommendation we can ask for, is to tell a friend. So please do.
Or tell an enemy.
I mean, I guess? Are we that bad?
No, but if you tell your enemy about us and they listen, then that could be a bridge.
To make them your friend, I see.
Yes. Because we're a podcast about friendship, Matt. Did you not listen to the intro brief?
I drift in and out. Anyway, we're also members of the Certain Point of View podcast network. You can visit certainpov.com to find more nerdy podcasts, each with a unique point of view. You can also find a permanent invite link to our Discord server on the website as well. Please come on over and join us in the conversation.
As for our personal lives, I'm going to be presenting a paper on why monster hugging is gay over at GIFCON, Glasgow's International Fantasy Conversations, Conjuring Creatures and Worlds. If you're an academical nerd, that might be up your alley. And it's an online conference, so no need to travel to Scotland, unless you want to. I can't stop you. So you can find registration to GIFCON through Eventbrite. Just search GIFCON.
Awesome. As for me, you know about my other podcasts. I'm not going to repeat myself. Very recently, Jeff and I went to PAX East. Not only do we get a ton of really incredible interviews, we got to see a ton of really cool indie games. There's a narrative one, actually, that's a mix of like a racing game and like a visual novel narrative game that, Frankie, I think you would like, called Heading Out. But we do a ton of really good previews and interviews. I'm really proud of the PAX East episode. It also marks the first time Jeff and I upgraded our equipment. Thanks to our Patreon, we were able to buy a Zoom recorder and a bunch of handheld mics and XLRs so we could interview using handhelds at conventions. It's the best quality our interviews have been on site on the show floor ever. And so I would love for folks to go check that out. It's our most recent episode as of when this comes out, because this comes out the day before our new episode. So yeah, go check all that stuff out. You can find me at djstormageddon.com. That's where my Ko-fi, my merch, all of that good stuff is there too. If you buy a t-shirt, please let me know. If you buy a mug, send a photo. Would really love to showcase it on socials. Yeah, that's it for me. We'd also like to thank Case Aiken for developing some really awesome t-shirt designs that you can get through certainpov.com or on our Teespring. Also, a big thank you to Case for designing each episode's individual show art.
We'd like to thank Redick Wade and Echoes of Oblivion for our theme music.
And of course, last but not least, thank you to Red Spinks for our Dragon Age inspired logo that we love so much. To see more of his work, you can go follow him at Chaos Desart on Instagram.
Well, that's it for us, guys. I'm Frankie.
And I am Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon. Remember, Grey Wardens.
In war, victory.
In peace, vigilance.
In death, sacrifice.
Okay, bye. Video games are a unique medium.
They can tell stories,
Immerse us in strange, fantastic worlds.
blur the very boundaries of our reality.
But at the end of the day, video games are fun. Whatever fun is to you.
I'm Jeff Moonen,
And I am Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
and on Fun and Games, we talk about the history, trends, and community of video games.
It's a celebration of all the games we play and all the fun we find within them.
And there's so many more games out there, so we hope you'll share in that conversation with us.
Fun and Games podcast with Matt and Jeff. Find us on certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
And happy gaming.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.